Your Humanities Half Hour is brought to you by the Northern Marianas Humanities Council.
Hafidades and Tiro, welcome to your Humanities Half Hour. I'm Catherine Perry, and joining me today is the chairman of the Department of Social Science and Fine Arts at Northern Marianas College, Thomas D. Sharts, and he's here to talk to us about the Associate of Arts degree in Liberal Arts with a concentration in social work now being offered by NMC. Thomas, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
So, first of all, let's start off with how this program came to be. Why AA in social work?
Well, one of the things that I think is remarkable about the social work field is it's growing. It's further professionalizing itself. It's been doing that for the last generation. My undergraduate studies were in social work at Buffalo State College in Buffalo. I had a job with Charlotte-Mecklenburg County Department of Social Services for almost 3 years in the Emergency Assistance Program division there. And we had such a great opportunity to help so many persons who were economically disadvantaged. And when I look at, our community here in the CNMI, and I understand how many different social problems that we have that need to be addressed, we know as an academic community that we need to develop or create some kind of opportunity to educate our students to enroll into a profession like social work so that they can give back to the community and help out some of the economically disadvantaged persons here in the CNMI. And that was one of the major compelling points for me to get motivated to try to find an opportunity to create an academic program like this.
Now, most people would say social work is about helping people.
Correct.
It also seems to be a line of work that requires a lot of personal investment, or it's a demanding line of work, I would think. But give us a professional description and an idea of what social work entails.
Well, social work really, in my opinion, I teach this at the college. I teach courses in social sciences, sociology, social psychology. We look at it from the point of view that the human being is 5 areas of being. One of the areas is spirituality. The second area is your physicality. Number 3 is your social relationships, your psychological well-being, and your vocational being. That these 5 areas give us a starting point to understand the human experience. And what we're doing in this field is we're training social workers to understand that each one of these areas could specifically experience a number of deprivations. And this gives us a nice groundwork to assess human needs and then create an intervention plan to meet those needs. And that's primarily what this profession is all about. You're a tool, you're a helping agent, and that's the point of view that we're coming from. So when you talked earlier about, there's a lot of personal investment involved, that's true to some extent, but what we're really trying to do is to objectify it, to create the profession where you're understanding that I am really just a helping agent. There are other helping agents that surround me, and if I'm a good social worker, I make referral to those other agents who can help meet the short or long-term goals that we've identified in this relationship with our clientele. But I'm a helping agent, and my primary responsibility as a social worker is to view myself as that. And as I objectify myself and realize that I'm not the only ace in this game, that there are other persons who can come alongside and help me help someone else, then now you're on your way to being a professional social worker.
Well, thank you for that clarification.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Maybe it's from, media exposure or something like that, where you get the perception of social workers being stressed out or whatever. But thank you for clarifying that.
Well, and Catherine, that can happen when you're maybe working for a county In the United States, for example, like Cook County in the Chicago, Illinois area, where, well, okay, you've got 100 clients on your caseload. Well, that's usually not the norm, but that's what burns people out in the field, is if they're being asked to do too much. So if, on the other hand, you're working in a reasonable social work structured environment where we understand that there's only so many clientele that you can work with on a given day or on a monthly basis, now you got a nice working environment.
Those 5 areas that you talked about, I understand that part of social work is also helping the individual maybe develop some goals that you aid them in achieving.
Right. And one of the things that I think young learners who are coming into the field expect is that they're really more focusing on playing the role of as an advisor, and that's really not correct. The real way that the process should play out specifically is that you're a helping agent, and that you're working with the client to determine what are those short-term and long-term goals that you want to achieve. What are some of the methods that we can select in order to help you do that? So what we call that involvement of the client in the process of helping, whether that's assessment or intervention, in order to meet these short-term or long-term goals, we call that self-determination. And that is a very big component of doing effective social work, that I'm allowing you, the client, to have that independence to be a part of the assessment and the intervention process in achieving my short and long-term goals. And again, that goes back to really giving you the ability to objectify the experience and understand yourself as a helping agent. And that gives you the ability really not to burn out, because some of the onus or responsibility is being put in the client's lap. I want you to be involved in this process. Now, in most cases, that's the way it works. There are other case scenarios where maybe, for example, a client wouldn't really have as much self-determination, and that might be where, as a social worker, maybe you're working in the criminal justice system, and you're responsible now to administer court-mandated objectives and goals. So that would be the exceptional case scenario where the client has less self-determination. But in most cases, it's all about, I want to work with you, we'll work together to help you achieve your short and long-term goals.
Now, this is an Associate of Arts degree, but as you were sharing before we started the show, it really opens the door to a wide range of professions, and NMC has a partnership to allow students who earn this degree to go any further. Could you share with us a bit about that?
Yeah, well, this really came about a few years back. I mean, I had already been mulling over the idea that I wanted to do a social work program, whether or not we were going to do it standing alone as our own institution, or we were going to work collaboratively with other institutions. Now, we are a member, Northern Marianas College is a member of the Western Interstate Commerce for Higher Education. The acronym for that is WICHE. And basically, because we are a member of this organization, any other organization that is a member with WICHE, we share tuition rates that are amenable for students. And let me give you an example. So in the case where now we're working in conjunction with transferring our program credits to Alaska at Fairbanks, University of Alaska at Fairbanks, they are part of the WICHE program as well. That means that any of our students who are enrolled in our program that want to transfer 48 credits, okay, our total program is 61 hours. So Alaska will take 48 credits. If they transfer into Alaska, now they're moving into their junior year there, they will pay in-state Alaskan tuition rates. They will not pay out-of-state rates. So that's ideal. So they're getting a great break on the tuition rates. They're getting access to a baccalaureate program in social work, which ultimately opens the door for them to go into a master's of social work program. And they can do all of what they need to do in conjunction with Alaska at Fairbanks here at home. Because when they go into their junior and senior year at Alaska at Fairbanks, they're going to do everything online right at our campus.
So you can actually earn a bachelor's degree, bachelor's of social work,
That's
I think
correct.
you said, without leaving the Marianas?
Absolutely correct. Absolutely correct.
Okay. Can you share with us some of the jobs, types of jobs that people who have the BSW or even a master's degree in this field can find open to them?
Well, you can really start out, and I'm using myself as an example. I mean, if you have a baccalaureate degree, let's say, for example, you're in the United States, and we have some of our citizens here who go to school here. Maybe they transfer and finish an undergraduate degree in the U.S. and they decide to stay, right? Or if they are here, we have government offices and public services programs here. So either or, the BSW degree gains you entry-level exposure to working as maybe a caseworker, managing a caseload that might be indigenous to child protection services. It might be related to I am helping parents who had children taken from their home have the children re-enter the home again. We call that family reunification. They can be involved in adoptions. They can be involved in carrying a foster care caseload. They can be involved in working with elderly people. We call that adult services protection. They can be involved in working in a hospital. They can work in a school. They can work in opening up their own therapeutic/counseling office if, for example, they move on to the MSW. Because in the United States, for example, I'll use that as an example in regards to the 50 states. If you have an MSW degree, you could sit for any licensed practical counseling certification in every state in the union if you have that. So this is a degree that just basically gives you an open door to say, I want to be involved in the counseling profession. Well, if that's what you want to do, if you got an MSW degree, you could be in any state and sit for that exam. And you would actually have an opportunity to become certified as a licensed counselor as a result of having that degree.
That's a broad range of
Very
opportunities.
broad.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, we're speaking today with Thomas Sharts about the Associate of Arts degree in Liberal Arts with a concentration in social work that's now available at Northern Marianas College. More after this break.
Did you know that you can donate up to $5,000 to the Humanities Council through the CNMI Education Tax Credit Program? Donations from individuals and corporations qualify and can be used to offset your local wage and salary tax, BGRT, and earnings tax. Call our office at 235-4785 to see how you can support humanities programs in our community and obtain a tax credit for your donation. Sizuus Maasi, Olomai, and thank you.
Welcome back to your Humanities Half Hour. Thomas, you've been here since 2009.
Right.
So you're no stranger. Feel like I say that every show. I love it. I'm always hanging out with my friends. Nobody's a stranger.
Right.
But in your observation or the analysis done by NMC, what would you say are some of the more critical social work needs here in the islands?
Number one, we just look at teenage pregnancy. And not necessarily that being a teenager and being pregnant is so-called wrong. The issue that really comes to the forefront with a younger person having a child is, are you ready to socialize and educate your child? Those first 3 years in regards to education are so imperative. They set really the groundwork for so many psychological predispositions that really you kind of carry with you your whole life. So I would advocate for just training opportunities from the point of view of how do I learn how to become an excellent parent? What's involved with me becoming an excellent parent? So the more younger people are exposed to having an opportunity to learn about that, the better. And that's going to really have a nice groundwork consequence for those young persons coming into this world, because mom and dad are helping me along because they have what? Superior knowledge. They're wise. And that is really a huge need here. I think that another area that is very big is services for the elderly. People are living longer, and we've got to find ways to keep people comfortable and healthy. And so I think the opportunities for adult protection, as I mentioned earlier, are significant in relation to that developing, aging population. And I don't have the demographic information here in the Northern Marianas Islands, but I know that, as I said before, people are living longer. So when we look at, if we go back to that 5 area of being model that I gave you before, what are some of those needs that elderly persons have? I mean, if you're 75 years old, and primarily the more significant people that you've been involved with in your life are gone, they've passed on, and you don't really have any significant intimate relationships with anybody, what are the consequences living at 75 or 80 years old with no social persons involved in your life? They're pretty dire.
Poorer health, they say, for one.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So if we, again, go back to that 5-area model, we look at the spiritual needs of elderly persons, we look at their physical needs, right? Access to health care, access to psychological well-being, right? What are you thinking? How are you feeling? Those are really important issues when you're an elderly person. And then we look at, vocations. Now that you're retired and you're spending a lot of time alone, what are you doing from a vocational standpoint that is of utility for you, that's giving your life meaning at where you're at that particular time in your life? So that's another huge area that exists here in the Northern Marianas Islands. Emergency assistance needs, and that really is kind of twofold. One way is that we have entitlement programs through the federal government that address issues of emergency assistance, like Medicaid, like food stamps, and you can get involved in administering those programs at an entry level with a BSW degree, the one that you would earn at Fairbanks in conjunction with our programs. Child protection, that's all about what are we doing to keep our children safe? Are there problems that are going on in the home? Do they need to be redressed? Do they need to be corrected? The issue of some of the homeless persons that we see here in the Northern Marianas Islands. I really don't know of any real significant programs in number that are focusing on the needs of those persons. Now, when we look at the homeless populations here in the Northern Marianas Islands, one thing that is a blessing for those persons is that you're in a climate where you can live outdoors and you're not going to die.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, maybe not this time of the year. I know last night I was dying. It was really hot. I'm like, boy, it's and I've been here 9 years now, so I'm used to it. But it's not. If you're really hot, you're going to find a cooler place to reside. So it's not like being in New York City in January, where you're gonna freeze to death. Okay, you're in a climate that's amenable to live outdoors, but that isn't really the way we want to dignify life. Now, it is true that there are some homeless persons who are out on their own and exposed in a geophysical environment because they actually choose to be in that type of situation. That is true, but it's not always true. So again, until we actually have a vis-a-vis experience with persons who are experiencing being out on their own or so-called homeless, then we really don't know how to proceed. So I feel like it's an area where we really need to do better with. And every year that I've been here, I'm seeing more persons who are out on the street in comparison to when I first got here. So again, I think the question really begs, what are those collective needs of this population, and what are we really doing for them from a social work standpoint?
From the types of needs that you've delineated, would you say any particular one is spiking at this point? Maybe it's not the biggest, but there is a particular concern that has come out recently?
I wouldn't really say that one is more evolving than another. I don't really have the evidence for that. I think going back to your earlier question, I just kind of look at it from the lens of what are the social needs that exist. I actually thought about an exercise that I'm going to bring into my Intro to Social Work class next semester, and that's where we're just going to take a ride. We're going to get in cars, and we're going to go out and we're going to look around us as we travel throughout the island and identify prospectively where are some particular social work needs that you see in regards to populations of people that exist right before your eyes right now. Now again, I mean, are we definitively certain? Probably not, but we might be likely correct. And that is really just an exercise to kind of put on your thinking caps and, you know, put on your lenses to put on that social work perception of what exists around me that I can readily see right in front of me, that this could be an area that is evolving into an area that could become socially problematic, not only for this individual, but for other persons who are connected to that individual. And that's where, you know, social work really takes on a very important stance in reference to what matters in life. And what matters in life is that when people have problems, yeah, they have problems as individuals, but their problems are what having an impact and influence on people who surround them as well. So that's what, again, creates that meaning, and I think really motivates the students to see the world really in a more precise manner that relates to how important this field really is.
So you mentioned this class, Introduction to Social Work. Let's talk a little bit more about what kind of classes a student can expect pursuing this degree.
Well, for us, okay, let me give you a breakdown of this actual individual degree program. They are really primarily getting a degree in liberal arts, right? So we have a straight through liberal arts program. Now, with this degree, they're getting their Associates of Arts in Liberal Arts as their primary degree, but they have a concentration area, and the concentration area is social work. So the 4 classes that transfer into the BSW program at Alaska at Fairbanks, and again, so the total amount of credits for the whole liberal arts associate degree with the concentration in social work is 61 credits, and they're going to transfer 48 credits into Fairbanks. So 4 classes that are part of the social work concentration are Introduction to Social Work, Ethics in Social Work Practice, Human Behavior in the Social Environment, number 1 we call it, and then Micronesian History. And the reason why we had Micronesian History in there is because one of the primary curriculum courses in the Alaska at Fairbanks social work program is Alaskan Native History. Well, I mean, we don't have anybody here who's residing in Alaska, so I worked out an agreement with Richenda Bettisworth. She's the head of the program at Alaska at Fairbanks to create a Micronesian history course. And we actually didn't even have a Micronesian history course. Barry Wixman, one of our history instructors, taught it this semester, and we enrolled our first social work cohort into that course this semester. So it will be running concurrently in the fall and in the spring for all the new cohorts who are coming through. But it was a great course. So those are the
that
4
sounds
classes.
exciting. You mentioned ethics in social work. Give us an idea. What are some fundamental ethics?
Well, one of the things that I did foundationally, and I looked at really the social work profession, and I thought, what are the areas that you as a practitioner are dealing with habitually in the field? And that has to do with dealing with issues of truth, issues of professionalism, issues of fairness, issues of justice, and also being a primary advocate for the clientele that you work with. So my foundation that I've built my course around for the ethics in social work relates to those particular areas. And one of the things that we did this semester, we looked at a couple of really important films that have been produced via Hollywood and said, hey, look at the theme here that really resounds around ethics. And that was the movie Doubt. I don't know if you are familiar with that movie. That is about a Catholic priest working in a local parish who was also, I believe, maybe a vice principal. I can't actually remember what his other role was, but he was primarily a teacher. And Meryl Streep. She was the head. Actually, Meryl Streep was the head principal of this school, and Philip Seymour Hoffman was playing the priest, Father Flynn, and the whole movie is about her being suspicious of him being involved in abusing children, particularly one child at the school. So the theme of that film was all about ethics and dealing with issues of honesty, dealing with transparency, dealing with justice, and we really just had a great time just taking that movie apart and understanding it from the point of view of what we as social workers would be exposed to if we found ourselves in a case scenario like this, or were asked to advocate on behalf of the child, or asked to advocate on behalf of Father Flynn. So there was a number of different ways that you could kind of evaluate that. And then the other movie that I actually did not have access to, and I just got it in the mail the other day, Dead Men Walking with Sean Penn, and that's another great movie about ethics.
So you launched this program in the fall of 2017. How's it going?
It's going good. We had our first cohort come through in the fall of 2017. They've got one other social work class to take in the fall, and that'll be the SW 250 class, and they'll be ready to graduate, hopefully in the spring. The girl that I had mentioned, I didn't mention, I mentioned it to you before we started our interview. She had sent me an email today, and she's ready to go to graduate, I think, in the spring and move on to Alaska at Fairbanks. And she's very, very excited. So really our issue now is just getting the word out. Here's what we're doing. We want to bring more students who are interested in the field into the fold, and just keep bringing these cohorts through every fall, starting with introduction to social work, and then in the spring you've got ethics and social work, and you got Micronesian history, and then in the next fall, you've got the SW 250 class, which is basically a course that is designed around studying all the life cycle stages of psychological and sociological development.
Wow. That sounds like a class we could all take.
Yeah,
we could all benefit
from. No doubt about it.
Well, I want to thank you so much for coming in and sharing with us about this program. Any final thoughts?
Well, I just want to say that this is a great place to be, and we got a great college, and we've got some wonderful instructors there, and I really just hope that in the fall that we have more young students coming into the college and coming to visit me over in Building K and expressing their interest. I want to study to become a social worker, and my door is always open, and I'm looking forward to seeing more shining young souls and happy persons come in saying, I want to be a social worker. So looking forward to that.
Thomas D. Sharts, the chair of the Department of Social Science and Fine Arts at Northern Marianas College, sharing today about the Associate of Arts degree in Liberal Arts with a concentration in social work. Thomas, thank you so much.
Thank you, Catherine.
This has been your Humanities Half Hour. I'm Catherine Perry.
This program was supported by a We the People grant awarded to the Northern Marianas Humanities Council from the National Endowment for the Humanities. Any views, findings, conclusions, or recommendations expressed in this program are those of the participants and do not necessarily represent those of the National Endowment for the Humanities or the Northern Marianas Humanities Council.